It sounds that simple because it is. Okay. And once you believe that it's
that simple.
So this is what AD, is AD still here? AD here? So he told us about, he said, yo, we called him on live. He's like, yo, what's the best way to make $1 million? He said, make 10.
2 million.
He said it like that. In my head, yo, 10, that ain't that easy. He like, yo, yes it is.
We just asked about $1 million.
He said, yo, if you want to make $1 million, make 10. Put together a plan for 10. You'll stumble on $1 million. I promise you, I employed that. Once he said it was easy. In my head, I think it's hard, but I accepted it. I just borrowed his belief for a little bit. And I said, oh. And I promise you, once you get around different circles where their zero is higher, the money starts to dwindle in your head.
Yeah, for sure.
It does.
For sure.
Thank you so much, man. You're very welcome. A round of applause. All right, so...
what I want you guys to take away from this, though, is there's somebody else who's sitting in here who just hadn't spoken yet, and you have an idea and you haven't launched it yet because you feel like you have to have all these pieces in place before you do. You don't. The very first version of your product or service does not have to be amazing. It just has to be valuable. Yeah. We are in here and it's hot. The sound was sketchy. Did you learn something in here so far today? The situation isn't perfect, but it's valuable, right? And so let's stop focusing on, and I say this all the time, probably every episode, let's stop focusing on trying to get people from A to Z. You may only be prepared for A to B. Stay there. Stay there. So he may only be prepared enough to go to these schools and get them in a group for now. Stay there. Start selling the idea of what it would be like to have a professional track team. Wherever you are in your place, you don't need more money. You need to start. You don't need more people. You need to start. You don't need more inventory. You need to start. Start right where you are. And if your goal was to take people from A to triple Z, stop. Mm-hmm. And just go from A to B.
So number one, we want to identify what you're afraid of. Because, in keeping it 100, bro, it's something you're afraid of. You just haven't shared it yet. Whether it's starting too small or failing, or it's something. And I figure we could just ask ourselves the question, what are you so afraid of? Look in the mirror. What am I so afraid of? If I wasn't afraid, what would I do? What could I accomplish if I wasn't so afraid? So one, we just got to identify what we're afraid of. And then two, interview the fear. Why am I so afraid of this?
You had a question?
Yes, sir. Go for it. To the mic, 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 to the mic. It's a live show here. You know what I mean? They need to hear you. And introduce yourself.
My name's Keandre. And
Keandre.
His original question was, how do you figure out what you're afraid of? Mm-hmm. Which I was looking forward to getting answered.
Oh, for sure.
Now that's my question. How do you figure out what you're afraid of?
Yeah, and I went down a whole nother path. So I think the first part is you just ask yourself with a sober mind. It seems like maybe it's not answering your question, but I've sat down with myself and say, yo, what am I afraid of? So this whole high ticket sale thing, I'm like, yo, what am I afraid of? And I realized, at first I thought I was just afraid of being on stage. That was me lying to myself. My real fear was people thinking that I'm all about the money. That's my real fear. Because I built a brand for the beginning entrepreneur. But if I try to sell them something higher ticket, then they're gonna think that I'm just so money hungry. And that's not the case. But that's my real fear. Mm-hmm. So what I had to do was I had to get around somebody who wasn't afraid of what I was afraid of. So one practical thing you could do is find some people who are fearless. True story. I got a bunch of stories that remind me to get back to what I was saying, just in case I go off. I was young, and I got in a fight. Well, I didn't get in a fight. The guy punched me in my face, and I just fell. And I don't know what happened. I was mad. I started pushing the guy. I was in elementary school. I was pushing the guy, pushing him. I didn't really want to fight. I just want to push him. You know what I mean? Like, yo, what's up now? What's up now? I didn't expect to fight because there's a bunch of girls around. So I'm pushing the guy. He punches me right in my eye. And I don't remember like him cocking. I just remember like getting off the ground. So at that point, I was like, wow, he beat me up. And at that point, I realized, dang, I can't fight. That's crazy. So what happened was, they break it up, and my brother is coming from the middle school. And I see him and his friends coming, like walking up to the school, because the middle school is like, you got to pass the school. And I see my brother, and I instantly get courage. Not because I wanted my brother to do anything or fight the kid, but as soon as I saw my brother say, yo, I got to go handle this problem. He's like, yo, who? I'm like, nah, chill, I got it, man. He sucker punched me. I'm about to knock him out. I got more confident because I was around somebody who wasn't afraid of the thing that I was afraid of. That's why I had to find some people who are at a higher level, who's not afraid of what I'm afraid of. So I had to find those people. And once you get in that environment, you stop being afraid. You stop being afraid of poverty. You stop being afraid of like making money and people judging you. Because it's being in the conversation, they helped me realize that the more you charge somebody, the more benevolent you're being. You're helping somebody. You're helping somebody invest more in themselves. That's why I remember in the beginning, I was like, yo, I just want y'all to invest. I'm not here to sell y'all nothing. I don't have nothing to sell you. I got some stuff to sell you. I'm not going to sell it though. But I want you to invest in something, because I know once you start investing, the money becomes smaller to you. If you keep investing $1,000, you keep investing $1,000, another $1,000. When somebody has an opportunity to sell you a course or something for $1,000, you're like, oh, well, sure. I'm not afraid of it anymore. But I'm telling you, you got to start investing so you can get around people who invest. And then you're not afraid to invest anymore. So what happened for me is whatever I'm afraid of, I get around people who's not afraid of that. Thus the reason I invested in this $55,000 program to help me get more confidence. Does that make sense?
So I want to answer your question directly. A couple of things that
was
you can do.
My story's not direct?
It wasn't.
Did it help
but it
somebody?
was a good story. It was a great story.
It was a good story, though, right?
It was a great story.
You was feeling my story.
I did. I definitely felt the story. How do you identify what you're afraid of? Let me just kind of let you in on me. When the real estate market crashed that you mentioned earlier back in 2008 to 2010.
This story better be direct.
I lost everything. I had a humongous house and the cars and the clothes and the handbags and all this stuff. I lost everything. I remember sitting in my house that I was foreclosing on, looking at all these handbags that I couldn't pawn for enough money to pay my mortgage, right? And I ended up losing all this stuff. And as I started to rebuild my life over years, I would say things like, I don't need that. I had that before and it brought me no value. It added no value. And so I convinced myself that I didn't need these luxury things that I had once loved. And as I started to make more and more money, I still was attached to this. I don't need that. I'm not falling back into that trap ever again. I am going to stay with basic things. I don't need the luxury and the designer. And I started to look at other people. I would look at the women who were riding around in Rolls Royces and think, she probably can't even afford that. I'm being judgmental. I would look at women wearing designer this and that every day and be disgusted. Like, do you really need that? My fear was hidden in my judgment because I was judging something because I was afraid to try to get it again because it was attached to a loss. Right? Something that I loved significantly, I lost. I'm just really into fashion. Okay. I am.
Did y'all see her shoes last week, though? Y'all see the Monicas?
They see the Tom. They see the Tom Fords today.
They're good. Those are good.
Right.
Those are good.
Anyway, and those were cute too. My Monicas were cute, right? Anyway,
proceed.
I like these things, but I started to judge other people with it because their pleasure was attached to something that brought me tremendous pain. And so I would look at this stuff like, I don't want it. I'm not getting it. I don't want it. I'm not getting it. And what ended up happening was somebody gifted me a handbag. Somebody gifted me a handbag. And of course I took it. And as I'm carrying the handbag, it was like walking back into my world again. Like, oh, I love it. I want more of it. but I don't want to buy it. I don't want to be dumb again because I remember that people used to tell me you're spending your money on these things and you're dumb. And I was convinced that buying these designer luxuries are what made me go broke. And that's not what made me go broke. What made me go broke was my irresponsible relationship with money. I had no knowledge about how to spend my money, how to create a budget for myself. And so when I got that handbag, it was like, I don't feel disgusted. I feel happy. And I want another one. Does this come in a bigger size? Like that. And so then I would start buying things little by little. And then I noticed that when I started buying things, I became less judgmental. And I had to prove to myself that if I could buy this $2,500 handbag, I could still pay my rent. And I did. And then I would do it again. And I would. The fear was attached to a previous pain. So sometimes you have to look at, what are you judging? What are you judging other people for? What are you judging other people for? Are you judging other people for the way they do business? Are you judging other people because they have a high ticket and you don't have a high ticket? Oh, why would she be charging that much for a course? I got the same information and I charge $27. Stay broke. That's cool. I like it. Keep trying to sell to 200,000 people a year while I'm over here and I need 400. Right? Do you? And I used to look at people like that. I used to, when I built my business, I had this fear. I didn't want to charge high ticket. Kenny made me charge high ticket. He encouraged me. He didn't make me. He encouraged me to sell high ticket. I had a program that I was selling for like $29. My coaching was $97 a month at one point. $97 a month. Now that number has a comma in it. And annually, it could go from a 5-digit number to a 6-digit number to work with me on a one-on-one level at this point. I didn't have the confidence to do it. It wasn't that I didn't think I was valuable. It was, what if nobody buys this shit? Stuff.
Thanks.
Sorry, mom, dad, in-laws. What if nobody buys it? What if I put this flyer out here for my program and nobody likes the picture? That was the fear.
I think that's a lot of people's fear.
It's too. What if I put the content out there and it gets no engagement? What if I do a sales call and they say no? Well, guess what? I have put content out there that got no engagement. I have done a sales call that resulted in no money, but I kept going. I kept going because here's what I understand about fear. Fear isn't real. It really isn't. Fear is your mind's way of processing what you think can happen. But has it happened? We're fearing something that we have not proven to happen yet.
Do you know what you're afraid of?
Nah.
Have you ever sat there and tried to figure it out?
I'm literally thinking about it right now.
What is your
Right
business?
Here's the thing. That's my biggest point.
Mm-hmm.
We have to at least ask ourselves, let me try to figure out what I'm so afraid of. Anybody through this conversation, you start to think, this is what I'm afraid of.
Mm-hmm.
And if you start to interview that thing, why am I afraid of that? And if that does happen, then what happens? So I was working at, and I want to, we'll get into your business. 2 seconds. I got stories.
He got stories for
I'm
days.
getting my stories off. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. So I was about to leave my job at the Cheesecake Factory, and my fear was, I don't want to fail. So I got a fear of failure. That's valid, right?
That's a valid fear.
Leave my job to be a full-time entrepreneur. I'm like, what would that would be terrible. Would you agree? Think about quitting your job to start a business and it doesn't work. Whew, scary stuff, right? Valid fear. But then I had to interview it. And I said, well, what happens if my greatest fear happens? Mm-hmm. Mm. So I quit my job and I worked this business. And if I fail and nobody buys it, I left on good standing, meaning I can come back to the Cheesecake Factory. I know I can get that job back, or I can get a servant job somewhere, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm like, wow, if my biggest fear happens to where my business fails, what's probably going to happen is I have to work back at the Cheesecake Factory. Meaning, at the point when I'm having this conversation, my biggest fear is me being exactly where I am right now. I catch that? My biggest fear is me working at the Cheesecake Factory, but I'm already working at the Cheesecake Factory at this point. And that's when I said, all right, I'm out.